So I always start by wanting to like dive into how you got into doing this. Like, so we first, you and I like first became buddies, like basically right when we were both starting our companies in
Mhm.
2014, 15. So I didn't know you in your life before that. I know that you were at Zynga. I don't even know what you did before that, if you anything, or you just like, were birthed out of Zynga. So tell me
No.
about where you come from and how you made it into VR and what was that moment for you?
Oh, I love animation, and so I've always wanted to do animation. So undergrad, I designed my major. I designed my major because Stanford's a hippie school, so they let you do whatever you want. So it was computer science, art, and psychology because that's the perfect major for animation. But my tiger mom said that I'd be poor and destitute if I followed my dreams to do entertainment, and she forbade me, like a good Asian daughter. I listened to her. So what do you do if you know computer science, art, and psychology? So I ended up as a UI designer at eBay, and then I was a usability engineer, and then a cultural anthropologist, which was the best job ever. My job was to
Oh,
travel
wow.
to different countries and live there for many months and study culture and figure out how eBay should enter those markets based off of cultural differances and how
That's
they do
amazing.
things. The best.
What year was that?
That was in 2000. I graduated in '02. So from '02, and I was there for 5 years, so to 2007. But nights and weekends, I was still doing, I was taking classes at the local community college, Dianza, because the Lucasfilm animators would teach there. And I was just waiting for my day to escape. Like, I've made enough money at eBay. Now I can pursue my real passion, which is doing art direction. So, but when 5 years passed, I was a product manager by that product strategy person at Zynga. I'm sorry, at eBay. I decided I was ready to get an MFA, but the deadlines for MFA had passed. So my mom said, "Why don't you apply for round three of business school?" And I hate business. It's weird because that's my entire role right now. And I applied and I got in, and I was going to say no. And my boss at eBay at the time, Susan, she said, "Don't be an idiot. You just think Hollywood's sexy, but you don't
Yeah.
know the truth. Go try it out before saying no." So I did. I quit my job, went down to LA, took all these internships. I was assistant to talent manager for Zach Braff and Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Paul Dano.
Oh, wow.
Love Paul Dano.
This is a
Um,
whole chapter I had no idea about. I'm so glad I have
yeah.
you on the forum right now, so I can like actually get to know you better.
um, and then script development went on. And I learned that everything in the entertainment business at the end of the day is a business. And everything's a business, which is really annoying. And
Yeah.
how I should probably go to business school because mother's always right. So I went to Harvard
How
Business.
long were you in LA? How long were you in LA doing that
Oh,
stint?
just for like 3 months or 4 months. I took on 4 internships. I emailed everyone in the Stanford alumni database, anyone, and they're like, "I'm ready to work for free. Just give me a job." So I just took everything I could to learn as much as I could, which is great because they're all different roles. Um, Ended up going to business school. And then the summer between my two business school years, I applied to work at Pixar. I got accepted, so I worked on Toy Story 3 in the sets team. Funny
Oh,
enough, they really
amazing.
wanted me to work in their accounting finance team, but I am not good with the accounting or numbers, which
Yeah,
is
me
again
neither.
because I'm all about business right now. Um, but the funny
Oh,
thing is, the reason
that's
I'm
the
doing
other thing
business.
I should interject right now that this is a private call with just members, and we use the Chatham House rules. So whatever is talked about here cannot be attributed to you. So like, just that's both for you, Maureen, and everyone on the line too. It's like this is privileged information, so don't talk about it outside of the chat. So you can share more freely that you're terrible with numbers.
Well, I'm not okay. I'm not terrible with numbers, but I am compared to my mother, who is a math major, and my dad too. So I always
Wow.
felt like I sucked. Um, so I went to, yeah, they wanted me to do accounting finance. I said no, I want to do production. I ended up at Zynga when I graduated. So I was like, oh, should I go back to Pixar? I loved animation, but at the same time, it was part of Pixar's so large and it's very established, and I wanted to be part of starting something new,
Yeah.
growing an industry rather than splitting up one industry into little pie pieces.
And this
But
probably was what,
2009.
2011? 2009. Okay, wow. So
So
it was really tiny then.
yeah, so
That was
I
like the
joined
early days for
when Zynga
Zynga.
had started, and so I was there for 6 years. I joined product management, Farmville, Yeovil, and then became vice president of games, looking over the Farmville franchise, and got really good at numbers there.
You had like 1,500 people working under you, right? I mean, that's like a giant division.
No, totally not 1,500. I don't
15,000. Like
no, but we did make $1 million a day. We had 33 million players a day on our game, which is amazing. Which is interesting when we're in the VR industry. Like, what is it with these numbers? They're so small.
Wow.
So it's annoying because actually Crow that we had released on YouTube got 3 million views in a week. And apparently for YouTube standards, it's really, really good. But yeah, like, it's not 33 million. So I just try real hard to be okay with that. But anyway.
Well, and then you compare those numbers to like how many people have probably seen Crow in the headset, right? And you're like, oh man.
Yeah.
It's just, you have to just completely reframe your scale.
Yes.
You know,
but we'll get there. We'll totally get there.
We will.
The entire community with us working really hard. But yeah, while I was at Zynga, I still work nights and weekends on animation because I love animation. I just did it for fun. With my two friends, Dice Tatsumi and Robert Kondo, who are art directors of Pixar. They started their own company called Tonko House. We worked on this short animated film called The Dam Keeper. And
which is so beautiful, by the way. Everyone, is there a link that you could share with people?
I have to find it. I'm sure it's pirated all over the place on the internet.
Yeah.
But
it was never like really released anywhere, I think.
Probably on Vimeo. Hold on, let me find it.
But it was you guys won, or no, you were nominated for an Academy Award for that.
Yes, which was super exciting because then I got to tag along and cry about my not being in animation. But it was really cool to be around the artists. And the main thing I loved about the main thing I loved about animation and being around all these amazing artists is, okay, there's this 2015, let's see, I'm on Vimeo. Let's see. Well, you guys should check it out on Vimeo. There's a lot of stuff about how they made it. I don't see.
Okay, just let's. I'll chat I'll add the name of it. It's called The Dam Keeper, right?
Yeah.
And it was made by, what was the animation studio?
Tonko
House.
Yeah.
Try to find a pirated copy somewhere.
No, don't. No, it's Tonko House. I'm saying it. Tonko.
What did I call it? Oh, Tonko. I called it Taco.
Anyways, it's the best. They're the best. But the wonderful thing about being around animators is, and the reason why I love animation is, I get told a lot that what I can't do sometimes by my mother, not good enough, or I think, you know how when you're 5 years old and you think you could do anything, you believe in yourself, and something happens when you get older where society gets you to conform to values of fame, money, fortune, beauty. And when you're around these amazing artists, they don't care if you name drop. They don't care how much money you have, your title or anything. It's about the purity of the idea. And I love being around that because it reminds me that none of this matters. None of this, business stuff, what society thinks matters. And when I'm watching animation too, it brings me back to that 5-year-old stuff when I thought that I could do anything, and it makes me feel invincible. So I love animation. I love it. And the reason why I do the role that I do, I don't enjoy being CEO, to be honest. I don't enjoy the business aspects of my job. I do it because that's the skill set I have to allow me to be around the people I actually want to be. Sounds really sad. But I just want to
feel the same way. No, I feel the same way. It's like I do it just because most artists like don't have the stomach for it, or like, really what they should be doing is focusing on their art anyways. It's like, I think both of us have that same sort of like, we want to like carve out some protective zone where we can, have artists do interesting work, because it's just so difficult to be an artist. It's so hard because it takes everything you have to focus on that creative process and to cross that existential abyss of making something new that hasn't been made before.
It is hard though in our roles. I feel like I'm the man, the suit. Like, no, it's like the opposite of what I want to be in those that
so is there, I mean, I'm so interested like in this through line that, it's always been about animation with you, and you've always done these things that maybe have taken you one step closer, maybe one step further away, but you keep coming back to it and building up this skill set. I'm wondering if do you feel like you're finally where you want to be now? Or is the fact that like, do you really want to just have someone like, do you want to go be the artist?
Yeah, I totally want to be an artist, but I'm not talented to be an artist. That's okay. I'm also practical, realistic, but and it's hard, this bipolarism thing in your head, right? Where you're trying to do the right brain and left brain. My happiest moment still to this day is when I get to be with the team, sit at dailies and actually see the product and go through it. Or I get inspired to come to work because I get to see the artwork. So that is what excites me, but it's still amazing to be able to be a part of that team. So I'm like really honored that they let me lead.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
it's like we're doing it just to be friends with cool people, right? Like, I mean, let's be honest.
yeah. But no, I'm supposed to say, sorry, my PR people want me to say, I love my job. It's the best. Being CEOs, amazing. Being an entrepreneur is amazing. I mean, it is exciting. I'm the type of person I'm self-aware enough to know that I'm a grass is always greener type person. So I'm sure that if I were the art director, that I would probably find reasons to want something else anyway. It makes for being a good entrepreneur. Doesn't make for great happiness, but that's what makes for a great entrepreneur, to never be happy.
I don't think anyone's that happy. I really don't. And I gave up thinking that there was wrong or right life choices that were at all possible to discern. You just make choices, and you know that it's never going to be perfect. There's no victory that's ever going to be complete. There's no project you work on that's ever going to be perfect. You'll always have to make compromises. And it's really about the process. And it comes back to the people. Like, I think like what you're talking about, like at the end of the day, what I really care about is working with people that inspire me and that I respect. That's all that really matters. And the product that comes out the end of that is nice. And sometimes it's, turns out better than you thought it was. And sometimes it falls a little short. But I try not to get too wrapped up into those types of things, and make it more about like, do I just like the people that I'm cultivating around me? Mm-hmm. So is there anything about being a CEO that you like? Is there anything that you're like about the business side, or is it all just like an endless, shit shovel show?
I think the hard thing about being an entrepreneur is that everything is on you. So if anything bad happens, any tiny thing, I feel like it's my fault. So it's the weight of the responsibility, right? I convince these people to join me. So I need to make sure that I am doing the best for them, like that what it is that they're doing on a daily basis is worth their time. Because startups aren't easy, right? They're a lot of work. So taking someone away from when they're not at home with their family and whatnot, that it's worthwhile, and that we have a path forward, because everyone knows that we're in the VR trough still of disillusionment, and making sure that there's a long-term path for them so that they have a good reason to stay at the company and be invested in the future of it. So I think that's just always difficult. I think the good things about being a CEO is it's good and bad. I get to make the final decision, but again, it's a lot of pressure to make sure you're making the right decision. But it's good that if I think someone like an incompetent decision doesn't get me, I guess, the half the time I'm making it up, the decision going based off of my gut. And it's the cool thing is, who gets to say that they got people to give them a whole bunch of money to make ER animation or immersive entertainment, right? I'm very fortunate and very lucky, though I know as a woman I'm not allowed to say I'm lucky. I deserve this, but I'm really honored and lucky that I get to create animation, which is what I've always wanted to do, and I get to do it the way I want to do it. So, and be part of creating an entire new industry. Like one day when VR is huge, all these people right now on this chat, and you, like, hopefully we get to go down in history of people who helped create something completely new. So that's
quite exciting. And I think it's the downturn that we're in right now is going to separate the true believers from the people that were just there as a fad. I think a lot of people have started to check out a bit, that were a part of the scene when it was really blowing up. And for me, I think the people that are left are the ones that really believe in it as an art form, and think that this is not going to go away, and think that it's definitely here to stay. So I'm curious, like, let's do a little tea leave reading. What do you think is coming down the path in terms of us getting out of this trough of disillusionment? Like what's your internal, like, guesstimation time clock? I've got mine, but I don't want to bias you with saying it out loud first. So you go first.
5 to 10 years, closer to 10, because I still believe that content is what is preventing mass market adoption, because I know that there's headsets that need better adoption of headsets and whatnot, that headsets need to get better. But I always say that I bought the Nintendo Switch is a great form factor, but the only reason I bought that thing was to play Zelda. I mean, now I play Cooked, and I cooked in all those awesome shows. Or what's that game I love? Stardew Valley. And love Stardew Valley. But I thought that I was only going to play Zelda, but I bought it because I knew I'd get hours and hours of gameplay from it. And for VR, if there's only a certain number of hours of really amazing content to watch this week, if I come back next week, is there another slew of great, amazing hours and hours of content next week for me to watch? If not, then I'm kind of disappointed. I put the headset in the closet, and then I forget about it and never come back again. So we need to get to a place where we have repeatable, lots of content, lots of quality content. And I know everyone says with AR, like, oh, look, there's this phone and everybody can do it. But AR still has the same exact problem, I believe, that VR does. You could have, everyone had the phone and everyone could have done like the 360. Just like people say that mobile AR isn't the real AR because you need, the Magic Leap Hollows, like fancy AR headsets. But everyone's like, but you could do it with a phone. Like, yeah, well, you could do the not as fancy version of VR with a phone too. So it's not because we don't have the devices, it's the quality of the stuff isn't there, and there's not enough content. So I think about how long is it going to take for there to be enough content? And that's why I give the 5 to 10 years, because unless there's more funding of content, it's going to take time for there to be more content. So I give it that amount of time. And honestly, even if there was a lot of money to create content right now, we're still in the experimentation phase of figuring out what constitutes good immersive stuff. So we're constantly trying new things, and in that amount of time, we learn how to make stuff that's really good that can attract, consumers and whatnot. So again, I still think it takes time. I think AR is, even, to be honest, further out. Because it's got the same exact hurdles, but I know that it will come, it will be there, and it's going to be the people who continue to do immersive entertainment that figure out, we're going to be the ones who figure out, hopefully, what's good and what's not. And so hopefully we help it come out of the trough, and I have confidence that we'll all do that together.
In that 5 to 10 years, because I think that timeline feels right, if depending on what that the end of that timeline looks like. Like in my mind, it's 5 to 10 years for something that's like mass adoption, where there's some sort of tipping point where more people are consuming immersive media than traditional media. That's what I think it'll take. I think it'll be 2030, somewhere around there, when that switch is flipped and people suddenly turn around and realize, oh, I'm spending more time in immersive entertainment than I am watching my television. So that's what it looks like for me in 10 years. Is that sort of like the endpoint that you mean when it takes off in 10 years, or what's that 10 year look like for you?
It's bigger than traditional. I think that's when companies in the VR space become profitable. And that's not to say that companies aren't profitable, like Beat Saber, right? Doing awesome. So happy. So there are cases where they are, but making money. So I think it is possible, but for the entire ecosystem to be able to, for creators to be able to sustainably create content, get enough money to make a profit so they continue operations to continue to create additional content.
So how do we have artists and studios survive in the next 5 to 10 years? Like, what's your advice to me? Tell me, what do I do?
You're already doing it. You're awesome, Renee. It's be super, super cheap. So save every time. Sleep on people's couches. But it's also trying to figure out how to be experimenting, right? So, like I said, what's going to get us out is by creating good stuff. So always trying to figure out how to make your stuff better and never be complacent. But I think that's getting money, making sure you don't die, having the cash there is the most important thing. So figuring out those ways of getting cash, even if it is doing, for example, so we are an immersive company, not just a VR company. So we are also doing AR, right, as well, because that's where a lot of cash is right now. So to make sure you have the runway.
Would you ever do stuff that's not immersive? Like, I mean, Eric Darnell is, obviously has a big track record in traditional animation. And I read that you sold one of your projects to, do a traditional adaptation of
so we signed a deal with Roth Kirschenbaum Films. So Joe Roth used to be the chairman of Disney, and Kirschenbaum was the president of Universal. So they form a company that made Maleficent, Snow White and the Huntsman, Alice in Wonderland. So they saw Invasion in the VR headset, fell in love with that bunny, and we decided to partner up to turn that into a feature film. So we absolutely do traditional, because I'm excited about the immersive nature, because I think that's the new thing because it's what I was saying before, why I didn't want to go back to traditional or go back to Pixar as an internship. To me, it's about creating something new. So immersive is what excites us. That being said, the IP that we create, the underlying story that Eric creates is can be told in any medium, right? Yeah. I truly believe that a good story is a good story. Yeah. I oftentimes say Shakespeare is great as in written format. It's great as a play. It's great as animation, Lion King. It's great in movies as well. And I'm sure it'd be great Shakespeare that we could do in VR too. But each medium has its benefits, right? So VR allows you to feel like you're actually there, which is why we was making characters. The part that excites us the most. So it'd be totally different if you told it in our invasion in a film. They'd be totally different stories, because each medium has its own toolbox. But we absolutely believe that our stories can be put in different mediums, and we will have an announcement soon.
Oh, okay.
But,
I won't press too hard on that, but that's good. So basically you're trying to be scrappy and have money come in from any, like, opportunistic, like, where is the money now? Follow that money and experiment along the way and wait for the industry to get big.
Yeah. So our team is small. We're less than 20 people. For some reason, people think that we have a really large team of 100. It's less than 20 people. But it's just keeping that burn rate low.
No, I mean, for what you do, that's amazing. It takes a lot of people to produce something at a very high Pixar, quality, and that's definitely the benchmark that you guys hit. Stay small. Don't spend money. Those are all really good ways to not die, which is, like, I think the big takeaway. It's just like, don't die. Like, figure out a way. But I think the one thing you don't want to do is, and the thing that I'm really worried people are doing, is going to be, having to go back to day jobs, or going to have to go back to, like, producing other types of content while you wait for the industry to get big. Because once you do that, you're no longer, learning, and you're no longer, in that privileged position. Like, I think everyone that's been in the industry for a while and is in it right now is in this really privileged position where you can be a part of that experimentation and figuring out how it works, so that, some of the people on this call will be the first people to figure out both the creative and the business side. And that's such a special, that's why anybody wants to be a part of a new industry, is because it's exciting, but also it sets you up for success. Like, if you can stick around, your chances of, like, cracking that code and figuring it out are so much higher. So I think from a business perspective, that's the thing that makes me really excited.
It's true, but you got to do whatever it takes to survive. So if that does mean to get money into the company, you do need to do something else as well. I say do it because it's better than the company completely going under and all that knowledge that you learn completely going away.
Yeah.
That being said, it's really hard once you get on that treadmill of doing the thing that bring in cash, then usually that takes over the company, and then it's really hard to go back to doing the thing that you ultimately set out to do. So,
well, I feel like this conversation got really depressing. So let's turn it around. in the survival, don't die. Like, so I want to talk about like more than just like how do you hunker down and wait out the winter, and not starve to death. I think we should talk about how do we pull ourselves out of this. And my mantra, and I'm really curious to get your take on it, is that I think we have so much more to learn for sure, but I think we've learned a lot. I think there's been some examples of really, truly amazing pieces of content, some of which y'all have made, and some of which have done quite well by certain, yardsticks that you could use. So for me, I feel like what we need to be doing and focused on as an industry is producing content that can actually make more money than it costs to produce. I've seen a handful of projects that have done that, some of which I've been a part of, and it doesn't have to mean that you're making a $10 million project and it's going to make $100 million or anything giant. It could be a project that you make for $50,000, but it makes $100,000. As long as you're able to do that trick, I feel like that's how we get out of this. Because as soon as you have produced one or two projects that have made more money than they cost to produce, then you can go to investors and say, hey, this is actually working. You should put more money into content. Because again, what we need is a lot more money going into content. But I think it's going to be very difficult to get that money until projects, until some projects are making more than they cost to produce. So that's my soapbox, and that's what I really, really feel like is the way to get out of this slump. And I'm curious if you agree or disagree. Let's have a debate if you think that's not the right strategy.
Very possible. I think that's for our studio in particular. It's harder because Eric, the stuff we make has to, for Eric, have to be of something that costs a lot of money, because the animation's gotta be whatever. Yeah. So that means we have to hire these more expensive animators and whatnot. So I think it totally depends. I don't think, that being said, I always argue with Eric because and he agrees with me that we'd rather tell stories with good stories with stick figures than crappy stories that are super beautiful. It's just for him, it's like, I would like to tell great stories and it'd be super beautiful. So there's definitely ways to cut corners in areas that aren't as important because the mass market doesn't necessarily care. I mean, South Park is paper cutouts.
Yeah,
but it's still awesome. So I'm always like, Eric, look at South Park. Because again, I'm the man. Sorry, the woman. But at the same time, Eric will say it costs money to you get what you pay for. So I do theoretically agree with you. But I think it depends on making sure that your creatives are inspired and it's to their level. And there's also
and the type of content you're producing is different too, right? Like gaming has a more established market right now. It's easier to make money with a thing that looks like a game.
Dollars per minute is much cheaper with gaming. So it makes sense as a business model because you code some and then that can last many hours of gameplay as long as you have a really tight, good core loop in there. So for example, Beat Saber, I'm sure did not cost billions to make, but that has really
a super small team, like in the Czech Republic did it, right? Like it's perfect example.
So it's amazing. And then you can continue to put new songs, or if I were to do game, I would probably do something UGC related or PvP or PvE in order to maximize to lower the dollars per minute, right? So games is a super viable way to go, and I totally understand why people go to gaming. And I'm majority of my background is from games. So I love that. But for what we are doing, which is narrative, interactive pieces, for that, the dollars per minute tend to be higher, at least for the type of content.
Yeah, they do. But and I feel like with a game, I mean, there's a couple of things there. One, with the game, you can produce something that is, has a lot of gameplay for not that much money if you're smart about it. But I think the real thing there is that when you're downloading something that's more narrative, or you're paying for something more narrative, you expect it to be a certain runtime. Like that's one of the things I think of for any narrative project, is that like all the stuff that we've seen mostly fits into that shorts category. And people are programmed to not pay for shorts. They're programmed to pay for like TV shows that you get at least 30 minutes of content, if not like an hour. And they're programmed to pay for movies, which, are obviously like an hour and a half. So I feel like that's an important issue, that like for narrative stuff to be commercially viable, it needs to be very, very high quality, and it needs to have a certain minimum duration, which is also complicated by the fact that people don't spend that much time in headsets, right? Like more than like 20 or 30 minutes kind of gets uncomfortable with most of the headsets out today.
I was told that people would have paid for Crow, because I think it was 27 minutes or something like that. The reason why we chose not to charge for Crow the Legend is because it was the first VR that like indigenous worldview for Native American storytelling. Because I've learned through this project that Native Americans were forced into internment camps or re-education camps and taught that they weren't allowed to tell stories like Crow because they were pagan. So it didn't feel right to charge or something. And we're trying to get as many people to see it as possible and get the story out there. And then for specifically Oprah and John Legend, who worked with us for way lower than we could ever afford. For them, it was really important to get the word out, so we didn't. But I sometimes wonder, I'm like, hey, if I did charge for that, what percentage of the total viewers would I have gotten if I did charge for it? But it did take a long time to make. It's like a year and a half, and it was 27 minutes. So that's something I do believe I could have charged for.
Yeah, I definitely think that's like commercially viable in terms of the scale and quality and all those things. I think you could have made some money there, Maureen, but I think it's all the reasons you just mentioned totally make sense to not charge for it. When you want to go back to the topic of how on earth we can like manage to like be sane humans that run companies and have little babies. I thought of that because when Remy showed up, my son, for like the first month, he just like is sort of like a little cute blob that you hold and take care of around the clock. And so I watched a bunch of documentaries. Man,
and once you start moving, it's over. Anyway,
I know. What I was about to say is that he's up and like he's crawling now. He gets into everything. Like I thought it was so challenging the first couple of months, and now it's like, oh no, this actually just takes more and more energy. So how are you managing to be a mom of both Baobab and of an actual human? Because as a CEO, you're kind of like a parent. It feels like your baby.
The main thing is pumping. So I had to pump every 3 hours. And I'm really cheap. So in my studio, we have 3 conference rooms, and I don't want to take one up. So what I did is I erected a shoji screen around my desk. And so I just pump every 3 hours, and everybody in the studio just hears the pumping sound for a third of their time at work. And anyone who's heard anyone pump, which most of you probably haven't, it's like suction cups. So you're like massaging, and it makes farty noises because so everyone in my office is hearing these like farty. It's like, but it's really great because
you're actually don't pump at all. You just have terrible gas. Can we just like be honest? Yeah. Like don't blame it on the pumping.
Yeah, but it's great because I'm like, yes, now all you men get to be educated for the suffering that we need to endure as mothers. To pump every 3 hours, even in the middle of the night. I had to wake up.
Being pregnant all the way through giving birth, and then keeping the kid alive. I mean, Selena does so much. It really is like, and that's I think that's the thing too. It's like it's a little bit different as a dad, just because like the kid wants his mom like all the time, and it's so amazing.
I have slightly role reversal. So my husband is amazing. So he works at this company called Bonfire Games. If any of you have heard of Rob Pardo, he's the chief creative officer of Blizzard. He created World of Warcraft and Diablo. So my husband is one of their main engineers there. And so despite being this amazing person at a startup and working crazy hours, he actually, I would say, having a really supportive spouse really helps, but he actually does, to be honest, the majority of, he does all the diapers. He does all the cooking. I suck at cooking. I'm good at baking though. And he does all the carrying because he's worried about my back, and also I didn't heal totally properly after the pregnancy, so I'm still doing physical therapy. So he's carrying her the most. He puts her down to sleep. So I'm very lucky in that way. But yeah, it's interesting being an entrepreneur. It does allow you though to set your own hours and figure out, like, it's because at all, at startups, it's not like you're working 24/7, especially as an entrepreneur, including when I'm pumping in the middle of the night to wake up every 3 hours to pump. I'm working in the middle of the night. So it doesn't mean I have to be at work at these specific hours. So that helps. And it also does help me be more efficient, because I'm like, if I'm spending any time away from my daughter, it better be worth my time. So
totally.
if we're in this meeting, what's the agenda and what do we need to get accomplished? So it's good. The travel thing is a bit hard though, because
that's the hardest thing for me is the travel.
Yeah. But you can just take her with you, like now where you're at.
This is a little unusual, but like I want to do more travel with them. It gets so expensive, right? Like I can travel by myself and I can stay at a Best Western, but if I'm traveling with the kids and, or the kid and the wife, I'd want it to be someplace that we felt good about the kid being in and all that. And it's just, like everything gets exponentially more complicated and expensive to travel with a kid. I mean, there's so much stuff too. Like when we were coming to Hawaii, it was like absurd. Like I felt like we had to like rent like an extra car just to bring all the crap to the airport.
Yeah.
But
that's interesting, because I think a lot more people in VR and AR and immersive are gonna start having kids. Because when I look at the age of many people in the industry, it is these young people who are so excited. I'm excited to see what happens. Like, I guess we're like on the older end maybe of the people who started companies.
Oh man,
so really,
I had so much gray hair, Maureen. When I started the company, I had no gray hair, and you can't really tell now, but it's like it's proper salt and pepper. Like I'd say, like probably 30% of my hair is now totally gray. Yeah, it's the low quality video feed. I don't mind going gray. Like I kind of like it, but it is weird getting older. It's very strange. But okay, so I want to open it up pretty soon to people on the line. So people think about what you want to ask Maureen, and let's get some questions from you all. You can throw them into the chat, or if you want, you can raise your hand and I can bring you in and you can ask your question face to face. And then also want you to be thinking about any updates or information you want to share with the group in general, folks on the line. So while you're thinking of your questions, start to ask them as soon as you have them, and we'll just keep chatting about other stuff. So another topic that we could talk about is who in the industry really inspires you? Like who do you feel like is doing really great work that maybe doesn't get as many props as you think they deserve?
You inspire me, Renee.
Oh, that was what I was looking for. That was definitely what I was looking for.
So I love, so the person who actually helped get me into VR was Ikrima, who's also, by the way, the most beautiful, handsome person I've ever met in my life. But, you guys, hold on. Have you guys heard of Kite and Lightning?
For those of you on the line that don't know, they were like the sort of some of the very first like kind of uber pioneers in the space. Like when I was getting into this in like 2014, they were like the shit.
Okay, I just sent you guys a link. No, they're still the shit. People just don't know yet because they haven't released their game, but you guys just wait. They're awesome. It's a PvP game where you're driving a little like Babylon. You drive this, you are a little baby, this ugly baby, and these little ugly babies are in go-karts, and you fight, the babies fight with each other. I don't know why I'm saying this, because
are they not Baby Royale, right? Isn't that what it's called?
Yes. Sorry, it used to be called Babylon, but I'm really excited for when it comes out.
I thought it already did come out. It's not been released. It was at Tribeca like 2 years ago.
I think it was, they continue to work on it, so I don't think it's done yet, totally.
Oh, okay, but, cool.
They're so small, I think like 3 or 4 people, and they continue to inspire me, and they're still around. And they have a great community. So I'm really always inspired by them, and Akrima's attitude. He's just super cool, but his outlook on VR, and he's just brilliant. So I love him. Of course, Felix and Paul, always have favorite, but I love Felix and Paul partly because they're really close to us. We do everything together. We share investors. So we're oftentimes at portfolio companies, we're hanging out together all the time. So I love the work that they do because they have so many projects and so many different kinds, and it's always like, what are they going to do next? So I'm always really excited.
And they're really genuine, sweet guys too. It's like, and I feel like of the people that like we should give props to, Stefan, who's like the unnamed third co-founder, which I don't know how it's like, how did that happen? Like he's one of the 3 co-founders of Felix and Paul, but his name is like it just doesn't sound as good.
It's all about the creators, Renee. We're the man. We're supposed to be behind the scene. That's why.
Yeah. Well, I love Stefan. I think he's great. And I love Felix and Paul too. And they've stayed really like humble and approachable and nice, even though they're one of the bigger players in the space, which I really appreciate. So we got a question in from Andre. What's the conversation like with investors, partners, when the actual VR headset numbers aren't as high as you're expecting? How does it influence securing talent for the next project? Great question.
For us, our investors, we got actually a lot of strategic investors on purpose because in business school, they always taught us to go get financial investors instead of strategic, because strategic can come with a bunch of dependencies or strings attached, and financials don't. They just care about getting the money back. But we specifically sought strategic investment because I knew the strategics had a vested interest in the VR ecosystem becoming big. So they are, in this case, much more patient than the financial investors. And also they can actually provide strategic help that helps our company, like whether it's knowing about their company strategy ahead of time, getting access to equipment, all this stuff has been very helpful to us. The main thing I am seeing for investors is, investors go from one hype thing to the next hype thing. So now it's all about AR, and then now it's going to be about AI. And so you could theoretically just constantly raise on whatever the new hype thing is to get the money in. I don't want to do that because for me, I think that's not ethical. But for me, I want to.
And it's exhausting too. I mean, it's so exhausting.
No, but a lot of business people love fundraising because it's like the thrill of deal, the business development. Yeah. I hate business development. I don't like. I'm introverted, so I hate that aspect of my job. But Renee, you're the most.
Oh my God, you're the most extroverted introvert I know.
Oh, I'm saying it's all an act. I have to, as CEO, I have to talk to people. But ultimately, so I think there is money to be had, but it is on different for whatever the new hype cycle thing is. So you could, again, one strategy is to raise on that new thing and then funnel that money towards you. I'm not looking to raise right now because I don't want to, I don't need to at this particular moment. But yeah, for sure, investors have cooled off a lot on VR. That being said, if you are doing a game, I think there is potential for money. Just point to Beat Saber, right? And so I'm sure now if Beat Saber wants to raise money, I'm pretty sure they could, because they showed revenue and that they can be successful. So investment is all about how to decrease risk for the investors. So, every single stage of the process, if you just have an idea, that's really hard for them to fund. If you have a prototype, more likely to fund because they're like, oh, you've proven that your team's able to do it. Then after a prototype is released to public, if you've been able to release to public, then they're, again, more likely to give you money. If you release to public and you have great initial metrics, then they're even more likely to give you money. And if you have great metrics and have sustained that for a long period of time or have blown up, of course, even more money, because it's all layers of risk, right? So someone like Beat Saber, for example, could easily raise money because they've shown that they can do that. Though the funny thing is, in our business, if you are creating content, it's ultimately still a hits-driven business. So just because you have one success does not make it for sure that you're going to have another success, which is why there was this golden period in even gaming where people are investing in companies like Zynga, Play-Doh, like all these companies, because they're like, oh, look, they're proven that they created money. But even for Zynga, the big question was, can you sustain that? Like, you created one hit. Does that mean that everything you create is going to be huge hits? And the truth is, no, you can't always, no matter what, create hits. So then there was a falling out of the gaming industry. So it's like people just go to whatever the hype thing is again. So, but they're still more likely to buy into the hype if you are able to create a success. So absolutely is possible. And for my ladies who are out there, actually not just for ladies, just in general, when you're fundraising, definitely watch season 2, episode 1 of Silicon Valley in terms of fundraising, because it is exactly like that. It's all about confidence. And the thing to always remember is my attitude is the investor works for you and not the other way around. Sometimes you might be pulled into the thing where you think, oh my gosh, these people gave me money. I need to keep them happy. I need to make them happy. But they invested in you because they believe that you can lead a company. They're investors. They're not operators who can lead a company, and you know your business the best. So they're there to help you and not the other way around. And I think it helps when you're fundraising to convey that attitude because they see your confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. So just be really rude to all the investor meetings.
Not rude, just confident. Just confident.
I was thinking of season 2, episode 1. That's the one where they basically insult everyone, right? And then
yes.
Which
that's
is
true.
one of the
Yes.
best episodes.
That's
so,
the
actually,
attitude.
I really do love that show, even though it's got a bunch of like kind of not so cool things, and I hear some of the people that work on it are kind of assholes. But I really do like it because it does capture it so well. I mean, it really is the office space for our time. I really do love it. A couple other questions coming in. Thoughts on Oculus Quest and how it will impact narrative VR, the making and consumption, from Alex. Hey, Alex.
Quest is very focused on games. It's marketed. I feel all the marketing so far has been talking about Quest as though it's a game console. So it doesn't mean that there's not going to be room, of course, for narrative content, but you can see from, at least on the marketing front, what is out there. So I'd be interested in seeing how much Oculus internally, focuses on non-gaming thing. I am excited about Quest. I'm excited about Quest because it's the headset created for VR.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you can extend it to AR, but everything else was using another processor, like attached to a PC, which was not made specifically just for VR AR, or mobile phone was not made specifically for AR VR, versus the Quest is made for VR. So everything's optimized for creating that great experience. There's the price point, and they have a lot of, exciting content ready for that. That being said, again, I still think everything that's being created right now is still a baby step towards the long-term future of VR, because I can't wait till the Quest headsets, which I'm excited that it's 6-stop, gets more powerful. So it can be as powerful as a PC, right? And we'll get there eventually, but it just increases the production value of what you can have. So that still takes time. And again, what I just said was, like the beginning is about the amount of content. So how many creators are going to create stuff for Quest? That's going to determine, in my mind, the viability of that product.
Yeah,
I'm excited about it.
I am too, but with some reservations, or like I don't want to have too much writing on it, because I don't think, like, even the first iPhone, right? Like, people think that it was this. I mean, it was an amazing moment, but I think the first year or two, like, sales were still like 1 million. I think the first year, like, it was like it didn't hockey stick immediately. So I think, like, that's a thing to keep in mind for sales numbers with the Quest. Like, I'd be surprised if it, like, overnight we go to, like, 100 million people that have them. It's not going to happen.
Because there's not enough content. So it's all about
which
content.
We need more money to come in to pay for all that content. So are you looking at location-based, and maybe talk about Jack? It seems where people are willing to pay for content right now.
I don't know if you guys have heard about Jack. So we worked with this amazing director, Matthias Chelleborg from France, who also made Alice. So he made a piece called Jack, based off of Jack and the Beanstalk. And we premiered it at Tribeca, where you go into this experience. You play the character of Jack, and there's actually a live actor there in a mocap suit, and it tracks you, and you go into this environment, and the other character responds to you based off of what you're doing. A lot of people thought it was AI. I'm like, no, it's actually a real human doing that. But that got a lot of buzz, and we were really excited about that piece. So there's a lot of interest in Jack and having Jack all around the world and people seeing Jack. So what I'm going to say about LB is controversial. So I absolutely believe that LB is wonderful because it gets, if someone's not going to buy an expensive headset, having a physical location for people to go to is great to get them exposed to immersive entertainment. So that's great. It lowers the barrier to entry. Also, a lot of these LV experiences are group experiences. So anything that you do with a group or friends is social is even more exciting and engaging. So it's like the first time you get to go experience it, low barrier to entry, it's cheap, and you get a great experience, right? So if that's your introduction to VR, that's great. And that's going to convert more people into VR believers. So I'm really excited about that overall. However, I do think it comes down to the business. It's about how much does real estate cost for location, and what's the throughput? How many people can you get through that experience at what ticket price? And if you add that all up, the numbers, do you get enough money to justify the rent of that place? And if instead of a VR company there, it was a grocery store or something else, would they be able to make more money per square foot of dollars? So that's a question that I can't answer, but you run the numbers, and the numbers are still relatively small right now for the business case for LBE. But that doesn't mean to say that it can't become better. And the question for LBE again is, can you get people to come back rather than just be exposed for the first time? Are you going to get them to come back over and over? Because if you get repeat traffic, that's when the amount of money you make per square foot can increase. But that, again, is based off of amount of content. So everything at the end of the day comes back to the amount of content, because if you don't have enough content going to those LBE places over and over week after week, then it's going to be difficult. So I think it's still it's going to take time again for that. That being said, something like the Void makes total sense, because if Void is doing a deal with Disney and that's within the Disney theme parks, that makes total sense, because that's just like a ton of foot traffic, and the whole purpose of Disneyland is it's like any ride that they have. So I think it makes absolute sense for amusement park, for example, to have something like that. So that's
great, nuanced answer. I want to jump in with some other questions. Audience testing. Do you do it?
Well, whenever we take it to festivals, and we take it anywhere, and we are constantly asking people for feedback, we absolutely get feedback. So whenever we do premiere at a film festival, we're there watching everybody use it, and then we know exactly where they're looking at the wrong place or whatever, and then we make changes after that. That's the interesting thing about VR. It's never done. Your project is never done, and you can always constantly change it. So absolutely. And we also, of course, look at all the feedback that we get on once we release it too. But we do bring people in throughout the creation of the project. We also have a brain trust, similar to Pixar, where a lot of our advisors, Glenn Keane and Mary Soria, et cetera, all these people are viewing our stuff in all the different stages of development, even in script format or game design. They're looking at it and giving us feedback. And so we're constantly making the adjustments to it.
Awesome. Got one from Craig Rutherford, it's like 4:30 in the morning in Australia. Thank you, Craig, for staying up. Yeah, he noticed that Crow had both a VR and YouTube version, one with narrative presence, Spirit of the Forest, the other without. Currently, do you think that it's important to plan an experience in VR for both of these options? Where do you see the narrative presence heading in the future for immersive entertainment?
Yeah, I love the interactive version because that's what we care about. And again, you feel just much more immersed when you're actually creating the environment. Like you're the asshole who's turning it spring to winter, and the one who's making Crow have to fly off to save his friends, right? So you feel responsible, kind of, for turning it to winter. But at the end, we make it so you realize that you're not really an asshole. It's good that you created change, because change is what makes people grow. And it's always, in a film or a narrative thing, there's an inciting incident. You reveal character by putting that character under pressure and seeing what does that character do under pressure. So if you're the one causing it, you feel even more invested. So yeah, it was important to plan. And it's interesting when you're trying to merge interactivity and narrative, because any of you who have done interactive narrative know that when the audience gets in the headset, they're like touching everything and totally ignoring the entire story, because they're like, what can I do? I feel so powerful. So how do you get people to pay attention to the story while also interacting? So we've been testing out many different models of that. For Invasion, of course, you're like, for most of ours, you're a character, but in this case, you are a character that the other characters don't acknowledge except for the Oprah character. So it absolutely requires a lot of planning ahead of time, especially from the beginning phase where you don't only have a script. We have a script storyboard, but we also have the game design at the same time so that we can merge those two things together. I don't know if I answered that question.
I think that's a great answer.
Okay.
And I want to make sure we get through the rest of these questions.
Right.
It's 8 a.m. now, and I want to be totally respectful of your time. If you need to bounce, we can say
I gotta come soon, so I got 5 more minutes.
Okay, 5 more minutes. We'll try to get through the rest of these questions. Kareem asks if anything you learned in business school was helpful.
Okay, the connection's super helpful. Yeah. You do business school for the connections, because when they graduate, people have these normal jobs, but by 5 years out of business school, they're all like vice presidents, CEOs, whatever company. So I need help in any industry, at any level, at any company. I have someone I can reach out to very easily through the network. So you do it for the network. The other thing they teach you in business school is how to be confident, really. Not meaning how to pretend to be confident. It's that you take classes in every single aspect of business. And so I don't remember anything that I honestly learned at business. I don't remember, like, when I figured out how to do valuations of company, discounted cash flows, is that accounting? I don't remember the individual things about that, but I know enough that I was able to figure that out when I was at business school and all the aspects of business, that now I know that if I need to do that, I have the confidence that I have the ability to do that there's not something that I don't know. And if I really needed help, I know who to talk to be able to do that. So that was helpful. It also helps you think about libertarianism and the trade-offs that you do have to make as the man at times. So that was, honestly, I felt I lost my innocent artist at times when I was there to understand some of the harsh business realities of things. So I guess
that's one of the things I really love about you, Maureen, is you're so like fun to talk to, and you're like one of the sweetest people. But you also have this like wicked sharp side to you where, I know that there's like a fierceness that I really respect and like, and I think maybe some of that got honed at business school, or maybe it was just your tiger mom.
Yes.
Okay, so we got 2 more minutes. Peter asks, does good content always come out of big budgets? We sort of covered that a little bit. Or can we start creating compelling stories?
You can totally do it for lower budgets. Like I said, South Park.
Yeah.
So actually, to be honest, even though Simpsons does not look like its highest production value, it's like the most TV episode made. But that's because they pay for their writers. It's all about the story at the end of the day. That's the most important thing. Again, you can do stick figures with a good story, so you don't need to have it. But for our team, a lot of them are from traditional animation, and they really believe that really subtle animation, facial animation, and body movements, like an actor, is really important. So I don't think it's necessary, but it just depends on what your team wants to do. But I absolutely think you can absolutely do it super cheaply and still tell a really compelling story.
I agree with that. Another question from Natalie. What tools do you use to script interactive stories?
I don't know the ones that you listed out. For scripting, Eric just used Microsoft Word to write his script and drawing things on the board. But we have also developed our own internal and partnering with other people, like doing previs stuff to lay out the different storyboards. So you could also just use, Quill or Tilt Brush or whatever to do that type of stuff too. But for the interactivity, we've actually gone back to traditional game methods of prototyping or development, which is, game design, drawing the core loops, drawing a visual map, and where the story goes in with it. So we've tried many different things, but nothing like the tools that we've used have been VR tools so that you can see stuff in VR, but we haven't used any of the things that you've mentioned there.
Cool, thank you. So I wanna get you going because I know you got so much to do. So Maureen, thank you so much for taking your time out. Will I see you at South by, or will I see you at Tribeca? When am I going to see you next?
Not sure yet. For sure, Tribeca. Not sure yet whether or not we're going to South by.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll see you at Tribeca, and love you so much. Congratulations on being an amazing mom and an amazing
Thank
CEO.
you.
And if there's anybody else on the line that wants to share an announcement, I know we haven't gotten to that, you can stick around. So we'll all say goodbye to Maureen now. And then if anybody has anything they want to update everybody about, they can jump in now. Otherwise, we can just say goodbye. We'll say goodbye to Maureen, and then if anybody jumps in the next minute, we'll talk. Otherwise, I'll go be a dad.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Renee.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
All right. I'm just getting a bunch of buys on the line. So I think we're good. All right. See you guys next Friday then. Cheers, everybody.